Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Yes, I would love to speak this morning on the beauty and adventure, or the power of the long journey. And I remember, I've got lots of great memories with the Hannah family, and lots of great moments, Stuart, together. With the boys, one of my favourite was up Benarty Hill on a fine sunset. And we had a little short time of prayer, and a few months later, we were up the Cleash Hills over Loch Glow, and Milo on the way down was like, Aaron, you know, one of my favourite parts of that walk was the prayer we did at the top. Can we do it again? I don't know if you remember that, Milo, but that was a beautiful memory that's embedded. Recently, as you are probably well aware, I enjoy a long journey. There's beauty, there's power, there's adventure in the long journey. And recently, I did one with Stephen, and there he is up there. Kids are asking if that's a big drop in the middle. We just had a little jump over that, Stephen, And, you know, on the long journey, there's all kinds of emotions and feelings, from anticipation and excitement. But usually, inevitably, there is a moment when you go, what on earth am I doing? Why am I here? Because there's tough moments, there's hard moments, there's moments that are more pleasurable than others. There's moments when you can't see what's ahead. There's moments when you're a bit anxious and afraid. And then there's the glorious moments, the beautiful moments that remind you why it was all worth it. And we were up Ben Narnairn and Ben Ime, and we had the option to come down the valley and just go back to the car, or someone said it's worth climbing an extra mountain called the Cobbler or Ben Arthur. And we ended up doing something called Thread the Needle. So here's Stephen threading the needle. Oh, it should continue. There we go. So all that effort and hard work to get up there. On the other end of that needle, that there is a very big drop, actually. So the beauty and adventure of the long journey. And Psalm 139 says, 13 and 14, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." Do you know that full well this morning, that God knit you together in your mother's womb? He created your inmost being, and outside and inside, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Or you're mysteriously complex. Husbands know what I'm talking about. Or you're amazing and wonderful. You know, all your talents and abilities come from God. Let's let that sink in for a second. We know that, but we need to really know that. All your talents and abilities come from God. Your inmost being was formed by God. Or to put it another way, your heart has been fashioned by God. I like that word, fashioned, fashionista. Psalm 33, 14 and 15. "From where he sits enthroned," not Stephen, this is God, "he looks out on all the inhabitants of earth," that's you and I. "He who fashions," love that word, "the hearts of them all and observes their deeds." Now, God has influenced the hearts of his children by fashioning the hearts of them all. And in the Bible, the heart is the location of your inmost thoughts and your desires and your inclinations. So get this, God fashions and forms your hearts. And for believers, God fashions and forms your inmost thoughts, your inmost desires, and your inclinations. He works in you, in your thoughts, in your desires, in your inclinations, so that you desire and work to do what is pleasing to him. as Philippians 2 verse 13 in the ESV says, for it is God who works in you. He's working in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Or the New Living Translation, for God is working in you, giving you the desire, there we go, and the power to do what pleases him. And the message, that energy is God's energy, an energy deep within you, God himself willing and working at what will give him the most pleasure. Now, it's important to understand that God is working in those who love and follow him. He's working in your desires. And this means your desires, they can change or they can turn. Your desires for one thing can begin to go cold. You may not know why. You may wonder why. I'm not talking about your love for God and people growing cold. That's a different subject altogether for another day. But I'm talking about when your heart and desires change. And in these moments, we need to ask God if he's moving in you, changing your heart and desire from one thing to another for his purposes and good pleasure. Because God may turn your heart wherever and whenever he pleases. He's God. He's in control. He's the king. And he can cause it to grow cold toward one thing and on fire to another. Proverbs 21 verse 1 says, the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. One of my favorite things when I'm out walking is streams of water. God's put a natural white noise into nature that soothes. And I just love streams. And I love this image that the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. That's quite powerful. An image there, a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. And it says, he turns it wherever he will. Or the Good News Bible, the Lord controls the mind of a king as easily as he directs the course of a stream. So God even fashions the hearts of kings and rulers and turns it wherever he wills to accomplish his purposes. And we see this in the example of the king of Assyria in Ezra 6:22. It says that he turned the heart of the king of Assyria to his people. Another example is God, he turns the heart of Cyrus, king of Persia, to help the people of Israel in Ezra 1 verse 1. And God not only fashions the heart of kings, but God influences and fashions the hearts of all the inhabitants of the earth, we're told in Psalm 33, 14 and 15. And in these moments, we must recognize that God is at work, and we must learn to cooperate with him. And we must be careful we don't begin to criticize the thing that our heart goes cold towards, as if that's why our hearts are changing in the first place. You don't need to justify the reason your heart is changing, but in these moments we need to give thanks for what was, for what is, and for what is to come. And when he turns your heart and gives you the desire for his purpose and pleasure, the great news is he also gives you his power and his grace to succeed. We see that in Philippians 2, verse 13, New Living Translation. For God is working in you, giving you not only the desire, but also the power to do what is pleasing to him. And our choices and decisions and actions are real. Of course they are. They do have consequences, and we're not denying that. But we also, understand that God is working in the lives of his children and influences your desires, your inmost thoughts, and your inclinations. And your desire for one thing can diminish and desire for another increase. And that's okay. He is God, he is sovereign, he is king. We have surrendered to him. And sometimes we cannot even begin to explain why, and we begin to feel even a little guilty. But if God is in it, we should not and must not resist God. And we should not also lean on our own understanding, but trust in the Lord with all our hearts. And if we do, what will happen? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own. In all your ways. And he will, depends what translation you read, isn't it? He shall direct your paths, make straight your paths. If we acknowledge him, stay close to him, he trusts in the Lord. Lean not on your own understanding. Understanding is overrated and it's not necessary. Phew. You don't need to understand, it's okay. Give up that need to understand what God is doing. The volume of your knowledge is a drop in the ocean of God's vast omniscience, super knowledge. How can the drop understand the ocean? It can't. It can just trust that God is massive, awesome, sovereign, and glorious. And if God is in it, we should not resist God. Imagine the drop trying to resist the ocean, saying, no, the ocean's going that way. I think I'll just try and go the other way. Who is a drop to speak to the ocean or resist the ocean? But we need to trust the Lord with all our hearts. Because once you recognize that God may be turning your heart, you need to learn to recognize what God is doing inside of you. Listen to his voice. Follow him and deny self. Of course, we should discuss it and pray it through with trusted advisors and get counsel. And your choices and decisions and actions are important here to cooperate with God and what he is doing inside of you. And as we know, we must continue to walk in love, continue to keep a guard on our mouths to ensure that we don't quench the Holy Spirit or grieve the Holy Spirit, who is our teacher, our helper, our counselor, our parakletos, our guide, one called alongside. The Holy Spirit has been given to us to guide you, to help you, so that you can follow in the steps of Jesus. In Jeremiah 10, verse 23, it says, NIRV, Lord, I know that a man doesn't control his own life. He doesn't direct his own steps. Okay, newsflash. You don't control your own life. That's very profound and it's very countercultural, because the message of the world says you're in control of your destiny. But think about it. You did not create you in your mother's womb. God did. God decided the shape that you would take. He decided what strengths and talents and abilities and personality and passions he would give to you. He decided what grace gifts he would give to you. He decided even what weaknesses and limitations that you would have to keep you humble and dependent on him. And even your weaknesses are a grace gift from God. And the Apostle Paul came to understand that God's power was made perfect, not in his strengths or his gifts or his inabilities, but in his weaknesses, because he came to understand that his grace was sufficient for him. Paul could even say in 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10, I will boast all the more gladly of my strengths, no, of my gifts, my talents, my abilities, no, of my weaknesses. When was the last time you heard someone boasting of their weaknesses? So that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content. Oh, there's a message. I am content. There's a message for the day. There's a crying need for our lives. There's a crying need for happiness and joy. I am content. If there's a goal, if there's an object, if there's a place that you want to reach, is I am content with weaknesses, with insults, with hardships. Wait a minute. Paul, you're content with hardships? We're taught to be discontent with hardships, to try and get out of hardships, to try and get out of them. But Paul says, I'm content with them. I'm content with persecutions and calamities, for when I am weak, then I am strong. The countercultural gospel message of Jesus Christ. Because in your miraculous formation in your mother's womb, he has already directed your steps by deciding the shape that you and your heart would take. He's fashioned the hearts of all inhabitants of earth, and therefore he's already predetermined the steps that they will take from the womb. But he continues throughout your life to direct your steps because of his grace and love. And he's actively involved in your life, directing your steps, even when he seems silent and distant. Because Joseph maybe thought when he was betrayed, Joseph in the Bible, when he was in the pit without water, when Joseph was being sold and separated from his loving father, when he was being thrown into the prison and accused of trying to sleep with Pharaoh's wife, when he was forgotten by the baker, when he was grieving and hurting, Joseph maybe thought that God was no longer directing his steps, but nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, you have freedom and real choices and decisions and free will and actions which are very real. But God is working in you behind the scenes, and you cannot fight and win with God. You cannot try to go in your own direction as God is directing our steps. And we must learn to trust God and not try to control our own lives, but learn to cooperate with God, working in us, who's seeking to direct our steps. And we must recognize and learn to hear his voice and direction and guidance. As Proverbs 20, verse 24 says, ESV, a man's steps are from the Lord. How then can man understand his way? Come on, there's a lot of relief when you just say, I don't need to understand my way. I don't need to understand what's happening. I bet Joseph didn't understand. I bet he had not a clue when he was in the pit, not a clue when he was sold, not a clue when he was in prison, not a clue. He didn't understand his way. The Passion Translation, it is the Lord who directs your life. Foundational truths of the Bible, of God, of the doctrine and understanding and knowledge of God. These are foundational truths if you want contentment, if you want peace, if you want joy in your life. For each step you take is ordained by God to bring you closer to your destiny. So much of your life then remains a mystery, and we need to get happy with the mystery, because in the mystery he is changing history. So we need to get happy with the mystery. We need to be fine with the mystery, because he is creating through you a new history, and he's making history makers through the mystery. A classic example is Joseph. He went on that long and painful journey, but he came to understand that even his steps are from the Lord. And so he was able to say to his brothers some very profound words. He said in Genesis 45 and verse 8, he says, I am your brother whom you sold into slavery into Egypt. But then he goes on twice to emphasize to his brothers, but it was God who sent me here. Wait a minute. You sent me to Egypt, but God sent me here. You sent me to Egypt, but God sent me here. Joseph is beginning to understand something very profound truth about God. Joseph was saying to his brothers, you meant me harm, but my steps are from the Lord, and he turned it around for good. And he used your pain for my gain. You tried to send me away from my destiny, but his goodness and love followed me all the days of my life, and he used your rejection as the catapult towards the plans and purposes of blessing. What the enemy intended for evil, God turned it around for good. How can you live with contentment when there's evil all around, when you are facing opposition or difficulty, when you're surrounded by difficulty and opposition and hardship? You can when you understand His goodness and love will follow you all the days of your life. And the Lord directs your life even over and above the free will choices of others. You know, Joseph's brothers could do him great harm and evil, but God would use that to fulfill His purposes to get Joseph to the palace. And Joseph is merely a foreshadow of Jesus. Joseph's life points to a greater Redeemer and Savior. Jesus, you see, was also sold into slavery by a brother, also for pieces of silver. Jesus also faced betrayal and suffering from the evil hands and actions of others. Yet Jesus, like Joseph, he understood that God directed his steps. He understood that God sent him to the cross. But wait a minute, I thought it was Judas. I thought it was the religious leaders and the crowd and the Romans who were responsible for sending him to the cross. But God even used the evil actions of others to bring Jesus to the cross, to bring blessing out of darkness, to bring light out of darkness, and to bring salvation to the world. Because you and I must remember that we do not direct our own steps. Our steps are influenced by God, and God is directing our lives. And as we go in His direction, we are promised that His goodness and love will follow us all the days of our lives. And this is why so much of our lives are a mystery. And we struggle at times to understand the direction our lives can take at times. But we need to surrender our understanding to trust. We must move from leaning on our own understanding to trusting God, not just trusting God with half our hearts or 3/4 of our hearts, but with all our hearts. Trust in the Lord with all your hearts. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct, make straight, or I like the Amplified version, He will remove the obstacles in your way. It means walking by faith, leaning on Him, and trusting Him when you do not understand the mysteries of life. Let's learn to enjoy the mystery, because through you, He is making history. We may not understand, but we can trust the goodness and faithfulness of our God. Proverbs 16 verse 9, it says, ESV, the heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Or the Passion Translation, within your heart, you can make plans for your future, but the Lord chooses the steps you take to get there. Yes, our individual steps are directed by God. And we may plan our way in our hearts, but ultimately God chooses the steps we take to get there. It's phenomenal, it's mysterious, but the certainty and assurance that we can have is that we have a good God. We can have an assurance that He is for you and not against you. He has plans for you to be blessed and to be prosperous, and He wants you to have an abundance. So in the mystery, we must remember what we know to be true. We must know God and know what His character is like and know how He has proved Himself time and time again, ultimately at the cross by giving His life. For God demonstrated His love for this and this. He's sending His only Son to die on the cross. In the mystery, don't focus on what you don't understand. Focus on what you know to be true. Focus on what you know God is like. I feel like a black preacher. I need to do a bit of soul, like, So, this is not a day for sadness. It's not a day for depression. It's a day for celebration. It's a day to celebrate that God is in control and we are not. It's a day to delight in God. It's a day to rejoice. And I'm going to, I always say this, I have got more notes and more stuff I wanted to unpack. But I'll email out my notes, and if you're interested, you can read through the last part on your own. So let me just finish this page, and then I really think we should celebrate. What the enemy intended for evil, he's turned around for good. What the enemy meant for evil, he's turning around for good. What the enemy meant for evil against Joseph, God turned it around that he would store up 7 years of famine and sell crops and seed to the nations of the earth. How could a drop in the ocean of Joseph's knowledge understand the vast ocean of 7 years of prosperity and blessing and 7 years of famine? He could never comprehend when he had that dream and told him to his brothers, and they got angry and betrayed him. What the enemy intended for evil against Jesus Christ by the betrayal, by the crowds chanting Barabbas, Barabbas, release Barabbas. They had no idea. No matter what evil comes against us, what darkness, what opposition, what difficulty, no matter what comes against us, God takes the evil that is intended to harm you, and if you follow him and if you are his child, he's loved you, he's for you, he's with you. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, because he is with you and he desires you to have the abundant life. He wants you to have the abundant life. And no, it doesn't exempt us from suffering and difficulty, but it does promise us this, that Joseph prospered in all he did because God was with him wherever he went, and he was just could not help getting promoted wherever he went. Wherever he went, people saw, like they saw upon Daniel, a spirit of excellence. They saw upon Joseph one who acknowledged the Lord in all his steps. He trusted in the Lord with all his heart. He led not on his understanding. In all his ways he acknowledged the God, like Daniel did 3 times. I'm acknowledging my God 3 times a day, unashamedly. You may throw me in the lion's den, you may throw me in fire, but even in the fire, count the heads, because you threw 3 men into the fire, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But there was another in the fire that would ensure that you may walk through fire, you may walk through storms, but not even the hair on your body, or if you're lucky enough to have it, your head shall be singed, because he is with you in the fire. He will not allow you to burn. Yes, it will be hot and uncomfortable and sweaty. Yes, it may be difficult and scary. And yes, you may be anxious. But nothing shall overwhelm you. For he is with you, and he is a faithful God. So today is not a day for being sad. Today is not a day for mourning. Today we are told to give thanks in everything. Give thanks in the mystery. Give thanks when you don't understand. Give thanks when you don't see. Give thanks when the fog comes down and you can't see a thing, because you're going to come and God's going to cause the sun to arise, and that fog and that mist is going to disappear, and all of a sudden the vast landscape ahead and the beauty and the glory all around you, for the whole earth is full of his glory. The whole earth is full of his glory, and you cannot see at times what lies ahead. You cannot see at times what the future holds. You can't see it. But when the sun comes out, when the sun comes out, you are amazed at the glory of the vision of God, for he is all-seeing. He is all-seeing. He sees you when you think no one sees you. He sees all things. He can see above and beyond, for he is transcendent and immanent. That means he's above, and so he can see above, but he's immanent, he's close. He's above all things, and he's with you in all things. So we're going to celebrate today that what the enemy intended for evil, God turned around for good. And maybe you're facing opposition just now, but no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Maybe you're facing accusation or difficulty. Maybe those who, maybe you've been unjustly treated, but just know that God is perfect. He's loved you. Trust him and trust his timing. And in his timing, sometimes he takes us on the long journey. We prefer the short journeys, but God took the Israelites. He took his people on the roundabout direction. He took them on the longer journey because he wanted them to see that their success was not down to them, but the battle belongs to the Lord. He fights your battles. Whoa. I'm going to go to some these black preaching lessons. These brothers that I listen to, man, they can preach. And so, Rana, let's just put that video to the start. I was going to start halfway through. So come on, let's stand to our feet. I see a victory. Come on. I see a victory for you. I see a victory for this church. I see a victory for Stuart and Hannah and their family. Stuart and Johanna and their family. I see a victory. God sees a victory. You may see the battle. You may see the mountain, but God sees a victory. So come on. I want you to sing like you're in a black gospel choir today. I want you to sing with some soul, with some depth, with all your heart. Let's just put that video up on the big screen so we've got the lyrics as well, please, Rana. Wonderful. Come on. Let's get it up, slammed up nice and loud, please. Nice and loud. Let's sing. Come on.